It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and more, Cauliflower is gluten-free always, satisfies every craving, and is ready in minutes. Cauliflower is available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to look for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 5, Betty Alexander. Betty Lou Alexander, who is known to her friends and family as Betty, was born on October 22, 1949, in Tennessee. Her parents, Fred and Jean Breitbarth, had 16 children before Betty, their last, came along. Betty has 3 children from her first marriage to John Schoonveld, sons Dave and John, and her daughter Tanya Tolliver, who is our guest today. Betty remarried Don Alexander, and his 3 daughters became her stepdaughters. They were married for 29 years. Don passed away 2 days before Christmas and 8 days before the couple's 30th anniversary in December 2018. Some of the information we drew upon in researching Betty's case is contained in a blog titled Truth Tellers that covered the case extensively, as well as the Facebook page Bring Betty Home. Betty had spent her earlier years working as a waitress and cook and then as a stay-at-home mom. In April of 2019, Betty was living alone at the Center Street Apartments in Sullivan, Missouri, a small town of about 7,000 residents. The Center Street Apartments are typically occupied by reduced-income seniors. Betty had lived in Sullivan for decades, and all 3 of her children lived in the area. She and Don had moved to the apartment complex from their previous home 4 years before. After he died, Betty generally spent weekends with Tanya's family and enjoyed regular visits from son Dave and his wife Kathy. She would also chat with the neighbors regularly. Betty was a homebody. Her social circle included exclusively immediate family, care providers, church on Sundays, and neighbor friends. She did not drive and was reliant on family members to provide transportation if she needed to run an errand. Betty also did not have a cell phone and exclusively used her landline phone. Betty had several caregivers who interacted with her on the average week. She suffered from excruciating back pain as a result of metal rods and screws implanted in her spine years earlier after a fall. She could not sit for long periods of time, and she needed regular physical therapy for additional spinal issues. Consequently, Betty's physical therapist made routine visits to her apartment. Further, Betty had been diagnosed with the very beginning stages of dementia. She was fully functional and lucid and was able to live alone without assistance, but was beginning to have moments of forgetfulness. She took a low-dose medication to control her symptoms, which were mild, as well as other medications which were delivered by her pharmacy. She was also the beneficiary of a daily Meals on Wheels delivery. She spent her days gardening, crafting, baking, and doting on her grandchildren. Tanya and Betty had decided earlier that week that Betty would not spend the weekend of April 12th and 13th at Tanya's house, as Tanya's child had a track meet 2 hours away that would occupy a large segment of the day on Saturday. Betty decided to stay home, go to church on Sunday, and then go grocery shopping with Tanya afterwards. On Sunday, April 14th, Tanya made the short drive over to her mother's place. Although her mom hadn't answered the phone when she called before leaving her house, and her brothers had mentioned that Betty had not answered the phone on Saturday, Tanya was not yet concerned. But then Betty failed to answer the door, which was locked. Tanya had a key and she used it to enter the apartment. Although there was no immediate evidence of anything amiss, what she found in Betty's apartment was alarming to Tanya. Betty was nowhere to be seen. Her glasses, which she needed in order to see anything at all, were sitting open upside down on the arm of Betty's favorite recliner. Meals on Wheels food containers were sitting on the table, with a now warm container of milk. Betty's purse was in the closet where she kept it when she was home. In it were her keys and wallet. Inside the wallet were her ATM card, debit card, and $40 in cash. But also in the wallet were 2 envelopes, each containing $100 in cash. The discovery of this extra cash in those unmarked envelopes might not seem bizarre to listeners, but Betty did not handle her own banking. Since her husband Don had died, Tanya managed her mother's account and handled her banking for her. She even held her power of attorney. Betty had not withdrawn the $200 from her account, Tanya learned. Where did this money come from? And where was Betty? As we mentioned, Betty did not drive. She also never, to her family's knowledge, went for walks outside her apartment, and if she had, she would have relied on her glasses in order to be able to see. Further, the apartment door was locked, yet Betty's key was still on the ring in her purse. The only other key known to exist was in Tanya's possession. Betty's front door was the only way to enter and exit the apartment. And there was one other disturbing clue in the apartment, something that had not been there before. There was a long scratch on the glass of the screen door to the apartment, several feet from the ground. Tanya went outside and spoke with Betty's neighbor Jerry, who happened to be outside. Jerry also happened to be the uncle of Kathy, Tanya's brother Dave's wife. Jerry started asking other residents of the complex whether they had seen Betty. Meanwhile, Tanya called the police. A silver alert was issued and the search for missing person Betty Alexander began. Because nothing in the apartment appeared to be disturbed and the cash was still in Betty's wallet, at first robbery did not occur to the family or investigators. But further inspection of her apartment and reconstruction of Betty's past week revealed that something was indeed missing. Betty's back pain required that she use pain relief patches to alleviate her symptoms. These were prescription patches of the pain medication fentanyl. Boxes of fentanyl patches, fentanyl gel adhesives, had been delivered to Betty by Sink's Pharmacy on Wednesday. 2 boxes were in the delivery, one for April and one for May. The bag that had contained the delivery was in her apartment. Extra patches from March were stacked on Betty's dresser, and the empty March box was in the garbage. One new box of fentanyl patches was found, labeled Box 2 of 2, but one box was missing. For listeners who might not be aware of what fentanyl is, it is an extremely potent pain medication that is often sold illegally to drug addicts. The gel from a fentanyl patch can be extracted and used to increase the potency of other illicit drugs, or to be ingested on its own with use of a syringe. A syringe cap was found on the ground outside Betty's apartment. It is unknown whether it is connected to Betty in any way. Police assumed from the get-go that Betty, who they quickly learned had received a diagnosis of beginning stages of dementia, had had an episode and wandered off. Unfortunately, this occurs all too often. As a result, they did not process her apartment for fingerprints. Upon the assistance of the family, they did inspect the apartment for blood evidence by using luminol, but found none. Police also tested the 2 cash envelopes and bills inside for fingerprints, but found nothing. Ground searches for Betty were conducted on Sunday afternoon and all day Monday, April 15th. Investigators brought in drones and helicopters equipped with infrared to search surrounding areas. Over 100 volunteers searched door to door and conducted grid searches in large wooded areas near the Center Street apartments on the following weekend. Scent dogs were brought in and tracked Betty's scent down several divergent paths around the complex, providing inconsistent clues to her movements. Cadaver dogs searched the area but did not hit on any scents. Unfortunately, the apartment complex does not maintain surveillance cameras. There are several businesses in the area with cameras, and police have checked into these. They also searched a nearby golf course and lake. No trace of Betty has ever been found. Tanya set about reconstructing her mom's week to try to understand what could have happened to her. On the Monday before she vanished, Mr. Reuter, a plumbing service, had visited Betty's apartment at 10:30 a.m. Betty's in-home physical therapist arrived at her normal scheduled time of 11:30. On Tuesday, Sink's Pharmacy made a delivery to Betty at 12:30. Betty was alive and well when they made this delivery. On Wednesday, Betty had visited City Hall around 10:30 a.m. This was to change the name on her electric bill from her husband's name to hers. She had attempted to make this change by mail, but had been told she needed to appear in person. This is confirmed to have been Betty because the electric account reflects the change in name. A witness at City Hall reports seeing a man behind Betty in line. This man appeared somewhat unkempt. The family does not have any idea who this man was, whether he was connected to Betty at all, or how Betty got to and from City Hall that day in the first place. It was unheard of for her to run errands on her own, and the walk was several blocks. As we said, Betty was not known to walk such distances with her back in such condition. In any event, Betty returned to her apartment after City Hall. She was seen there by her regular housekeeper, who arrived around noon with a delivery of groceries from the local food bank. The housekeeper later told Tanya that Betty seemed completely fine and had told her that she was sleeping better. Meals on Wheels also arrived around midday, and Betty answered the door and thanked them for the food. Around 1:15 p.m., Sink's Pharmacy arrived with the delivery of multiple medications. That same afternoon, an outgoing call was made from Betty's apartment to Sink's Pharmacy, but it is not known what was discussed during this call. The last confirmed sighting of Betty by someone who knew her was around 3 o'clock on Wednesday, April 10, 2019. She was seen tending to her flowers in the small flower bed outside her apartment. The witness was her neighbor Jerry, who knew her well. After this sighting, there is no more concrete information about Betty's activities. It is believed that she went to bed as usual on Wednesday night, as her nighttime medication dose for that evening was missing. Her schedule called for her to take that dose at 7 o'clock p.m. On Thursday, no one recalls seeing Betty. She did not take her morning medication. Her physical therapist called her twice that morning but received no response. Meals on Wheels attempted to deliver Betty's daily meal at 11:15 a.m. and again at 12:15, but Betty did not answer the door and it was locked. She never checked her mail that day either. Betty's neighbors did not see her at all that day, they said. On Friday, Meals on Wheels attempted another delivery to Betty around noon. This time, they found the door to the apartment standing open. They placed the meals for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, as well as a cold carton of milk, on the table, as they had agreed to do if Betty was not home and the door was unlocked. When they left the apartment door as they had found it, ajar. There was no sign of Betty. The next known person to visit Betty's apartment was Tanya on Sunday. As we know, she found the door locked and her mother nowhere to be found. After Betty failed to show up as days and weeks passed, police began to take the investigation more seriously. One detective told Tanya that he no longer believed Betty had just wandered off. Police looked into anyone who had come into contact with her. We can presume that investigators spoke to the housekeeper, the Meals on Wheels volunteers, the physical therapist, the plumber, and the pharmacy delivery person. Police were unable to track down the man whom a witness had said was standing behind Betty at City Hall. Frustrated and concerned, Tanya hired a private investigator, John Mackey, to look into what could have happened to her mother. On Saturday, May 11th, 1 month after Betty vanished, Mackey went into Betty's apartment with Tanya's permission to photograph and document the scene. All Betty's possessions were still in the apartment at this time. Mackey was able to locate 2 witnesses who believe they saw Betty. This supposed sighting of her took place on Thursday, April 11th, around 5 o'clock p.m., as the 2 left work at Fidelity, a utility company a block from Betty's apartment. The witnesses reported seeing Betty in front of the Sullivan fire station. She was standing still, in the middle of the road, staring fixedly at the fire station, and she seemed very frightened. She did not step aside as the car approached her. The car had to drive around her. According to the witnesses, Betty was wearing a matching tan-colored top and pants outfit. To be clear, it has never been confirmed that the woman seen was Betty Alexander. There were no cameras at the fire station. If it was Betty, then the last known sighting of her is no longer Wednesday, April 10th, but Thursday, April 11th, on a day when we know she did not take her medication and was not present for the Meals on Wheels delivery. Where was Betty during those intervening hours? On Saturday, May 11th, after private investigator Mackey left Betty's apartment, Tanya's brothers John and Dave texted her about meeting up at Betty's on Mother's Day. But instead, that Saturday night, they showed up at the apartment with a trailer and cleaned out the apartment. They did not have a key. They entered by breaking the lock and then changed the lock, leaving a key under the mat. The son of one of the brothers posted on social media that their intention had been to ensure that Betty's things were placed safely in storage since the lease was coming to an end, and since the three siblings had agreed that Betty, should she be located, would no longer be living alone. Unfortunately, Dave and John were mistaken about the apartment needing to be vacated. The rent and utilities were paid up, and the landlord was aware of the situation. Eventually, Jerry moved into the apartment and was given some of Betty's furniture by his niece Kathy, Dave's wife. One very strange thing was discovered through conversations with neighbors of Betty's. About 5 days before Betty disappeared, Jerry, Kathy's uncle, said he had seen framed family photos of Dave and Kathy in the apartment complex's small dumpster. These were photos that had been on the wall in Betty's apartment. Tanya does not know how these photos got into the dumpster or why. Betty was attached to family photos, and it seems unlikely that she would dispose of them. If she did, what could have motivated her to do so? This is just one of many unanswered questions in this case. The family has been struggling for a year to determine what could have happened to this sweet grandmother who simply vanished into thin air. Tanya does not believe that Betty simply wandered off as a result of her dementia and suffered a misadventure. Betty's doctor told her that Betty's condition would have been unlikely to have caused this type of confusion, as her symptoms were very mild. But what could have happened to her? How did she get to City Hall that Wednesday before she disappeared? Who locked the door to her apartment sometime between Friday and Sunday? Where is the missing box of fentanyl? And where did the $200 cash in the envelopes come from? Could Betty have been selling her fentanyl patches? If so, to whom? Or did someone discover that this vulnerable older woman who lived alone had ready access to the desirable drug and took advantage of her? Betty Alexander is 70 years old. She is a white female, 5 feet tall, about 145 pounds, with brown hair and blonde all-over highlights and blue eyes. She wears her hair at shoulder length. If you have any information about the whereabouts of Betty Alexander, please call the Sullivan Police Department at 573-468-8001. There is an anonymous tip line as well. That number is 573-860-5637. Additionally, please visit the Facebook page Bring Betty Home for updated information. Mike Morford sat down to talk with Betty's daughter, Tanya Tolliver, for Missing Persons. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors. Please consider supporting our sponsors the way that our sponsors support this podcast. It's with our sponsors' support that we can continue to bring you new episodes of Missing Persons.
It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and crowd-pleasing snacks, Cauliflower satisfies every craving. Cauliflower's products are your favorite comfort foods, but made better for you and gluten-free always. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Craving pizza? You can enjoy Cauliflower's delicious margarita pizza for only 370 calories for half the pizza. Looking for easy snacks that kids and adults alike will love? Cauliflower's baked, never-fried pizza snacks are nostalgia reimagined and ready in 5 minutes. Cauliflower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Let's be honest. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with wired bras. We love the lift, but hate the digging. We love the support, but hate feeling trapped. Well, Knix just changed everything with FreeFlex, a wired bra actually designed to work with your body, not against it. FreeFlex features a revolutionary, flexible wire that moves when you move, bends when you bend, and keeps everything exactly where you want it. No poking, no stabbing, no constant readjusting, just freedom to move. It also has a demi-cup shape for a natural lift with a lower neckline that flatters in everything from V-necks to dresses. And because it's from Knix, it's available in sizes for every body. Experience the first wired bra you'll actually want to wear all day. Visit Knix.com for 15% off your order with FreeFlex15. That's KNIX.com, code FreeFlex15 for 15% off. Knix.com.
Hi, Tanya, and thanks for coming on Missing Persons to discuss your mom Betty's case with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
If you would, can you start out by telling us a little bit about your mom herself, some of your favorite memories of who she is or what kind of person she is?
Basically, probably the best word I can think to describe her is going to be grandma. She was very family-oriented. She loved her grandkids, loved hanging out with family, always made sure that, that her family was the center of her life. She was always into baking and cooking. The whole family, and anybody that knew her for her cooking skills and her baking skills. And that's something that we kind of like to do together, me and her. And then when my daughter got old enough, we had kind of a 3-generation thing where we would bake Christmas cookie trays for everybody or be in the kitchen making holiday dinners together. Those are the memories of when you talk about Mom, people remember her being in the kitchen and cooking.
So she sounds like a regular run-of-the-mill mother, grandmother, not the kind of person who you would expect to go missing suddenly.
No, absolutely not.
And at the time that your mom did go missing, can you tell us a little bit about what her typical daily routine was or her home life was like at that point?
She had stayed around. She lived in a senior apartment complex, and she pretty much just, she wouldn't go on walks. She would go and talk to the neighbors during the week, and then on the weekends, Dad had passed away. It was 4 months before she went missing. And after he passed away, she had started out spending weeks at a time at my house and then to every weekend. And so every week she was at my house spending time with us.
Your mom was living just a normal life. There was nothing unusual about her circumstances. A regular day when she went missing, it seems like.
Right. She had, her scheduled, she was doing in-home physical therapy. She would have Meals on Wheels stop by. She always had somebody coming by our house and that would check on her, and then also, her speaking with her neighbors on a daily basis.
You mentioned a lot of people stopping by. Did she have a lot of friends that she was social with?
It would just be, a handful of the residents that live there in the apartment complex that would stop by and talk to her.
Take us back to that day in April 2019. How and when did you find out that your mom was missing?
This was actually the first weekend since Dad had passed that we actually had a change in plans. And my daughter had a track meet in Jefferson City, which is about an hour and a half away. It was an all-day track meet. So I had told Mom, I said, she has back problems. And I told her that I pick her up and then probably drop her off at like 8 o'clock in the morning, that Saturday morning, so we could leave out for the track meet. And she's like, well, that's fine. I'll just go ahead and I'll stay home and I'll go to church on Sunday. I said, okay, well, I'll pick you up after church and sometime Sunday afternoon, and we'll go and do your grocery shopping and spend some time with you then. So I said I had her that day and had told him my plans that I was going to go pick her up on Sunday, and he said he had tried calling her and she didn't answer, which even though Mom had a wall phone, if she was sitting on the couch, she somehow always answered at the very first ring. So Sunday when I was going over there, I called her as I was leaving my house, and she didn't answer. And when I got to her house, I went to knock on the door. There was no answer, and I tried the door. It was locked. And she had given me a key, so I opened the door, and I called for her, and I didn't hear an answer. And I walked in, and I saw she had her meal from Meals on Wheels sitting on the table and the box with other meals in it. And I looked through her apartment, and came back into the living room where I found her glasses were laying on the arm of her reclining chair. And that's when I knew that something was really wrong, because she didn't go anywhere. As soon as she would wake up, she would put her glasses on. So she didn't go anywhere without her glasses. And I knew something was up then. So I called my brother and told him that she wasn't there. Her glasses were left behind. Her Meals on Wheels was on the table. And when I had first seen that, I grabbed the milk to see if it was still cold, and it wasn't cold. So I knew something was wrong, because Mom she wasn't one to waste food. And so I went out and talked to her neighbor, Jerry. He was out there, and that is my other brother's uncle-in-law. And while I was talking to him, he started asking neighbors if they had seen her. And I got on the phone with the police and called them out there.
So you knew right away this was not like her. Something was wrong.
Right. As soon as I saw the glasses laying there and her Meals on Wheels on the table was warm, I knew something was wrong.
And I take it too, because her eyesight was bad, she needed those glasses to go anywhere, to go out.
Right. Yeah. And even like her neighbors said, they never saw her anywhere, even to go check the mail without her glasses on.
Were you able to find out when that Meals on Wheels stuff was delivered and create sort of a timeline from when it was delivered to when you arrived at the apartment and figure out how much time had passed in between?
That delivery was made on Friday, and they had the box with Saturday and Sunday's meals sitting on the table along with it. When Meals on Wheels was spoken to, they said they had tried delivering Thursday on the 11th, and there was no answer. And then on Friday, they had tried, and the door was ajar, so they just left the meals on the table, which it had been agreed on that if she wasn't there and the door was unlocked, that they could just leave it there.
So essentially, they just came in, sat the stuff on the table, and it's possible your mom never even touched it or opened it, that she may have been missing since the day before.
Right. I had talked to her neighbors, too, and they said on Thursday that nobody had seen her. Usually, they said as soon as the mail's delivered, that they see her walking out to her mailbox, checking the mail, and then going back in. And they said Thursday they never saw her come out either.
So this is, it's highly unusual. Your mom can't see with her glasses. She doesn't drive. She doesn't have a car. So if she's gone anywhere, she's gone on foot, I think is what was believed at the time.
Right.
Did you think she would have gone anywhere or walked anywhere, like, without her glasses? Or was that something that you just didn't believe that right away because she couldn't see?
No.
Yeah.
Right.
And was she the kind of person that would have opened up the door, let anyone in if she didn't know them or trust them?
Unfortunately, she was. I just know that because she was telling me about an insurance agent who had come by and switched insurances, medical insurance, for her. So she would most likely open the door for somebody that she didn't know.
And was that because she was just a trusting person and didn't really look at the possibility that somebody had ulterior motives?
Right.
So at this point, you noticed her glasses right away. That was one of the things you said you saw. You also found some other things, or correct me if I'm wrong, or the police found them, was that there was no signs of any of your mom's stuff being missing other than the box of fentanyl that she had just received?
That's correct.
That was the only thing that you knew was missing?
Yes. Her purse with all of her debit card, medical cards, everything like that was still in her purse. Her apartment keys were also in her purse. Everything was there. She had cash in there that she had from the ATM, but then she also had 2 envelopes that were in her wallet, and each one had $100 in it that we can't figure out where that extra money came from. And I personally was handling her bills, and ever since Dad had passed away. So I was able to check the bank account. There was nothing. The money didn't come out of there. And then we did check and saw that the fentanyl, there were 2 boxes that were delivered that day, and they were labeled, the one that was left was labeled box 2 of 2. And box 1 of 2 was nowhere to be found, but she had an empty box from March that was in the trash can.
If I'm not mistaken, this was because your mom suffered from a really bad back problem. Is that correct? Why she used that?
Yes, she had a surgery where she had rods and screws that were put in her back back when I was a kid. She was also having some other issues with her spine that was causing her pain.
Okay, so she needed that to manage the pain. Now, it's a very strange case because on one hand, it seems like in your mind something happened. She met with foul play, but there's not anything really missing besides this one box. But there's also mystery money left behind, which is, if it's a robbery that went wrong or something like that, robbers aren't going to leave money. If anything, they're going to try and take money, not leave it.
Right.
Did you have a hard time reconciling that? I'm sure that's gone through your head a million times. Where'd that money come from? Who put it there? That kind of thing?
Right. Yes. And I really believe that missing box of fentanyl and the extra $200 that was found in her purse have some link to what is going on with her case. I just can't figure out. If it was somebody coming to rob her, they would have taken the cash that was in her purse, her TVs, any kind of electronics, anything of value that was in her house, but nothing at all was touched in her house.
So those are things you noticed. The police went through the apartment too. Did they find anything unusual or out of the ordinary? Any clues they could work with?
They did not.
And do you know if they did any kind of fingerprint testing on the envelopes themselves or anything like that?
They did on the envelopes and the money, and they weren't able to pull any viable prints off of it, is what I was told.
Well, that's frustrating, and that's unusual too. Because if someone handled that, there should be, even if it was your mom, there should have been fingerprints on it from someone.
Right.
So they could have taken steps to avoid leaving any fingerprints on that. When the police came, did they treat this as a case of an older person that wanders off because they have dementia or something like that? Or did they treat it in your mind like there was foul play involved?
It was absolutely treated like a dementia case. As soon as I dropped the word dementia, it was treated as, oh, she just wandered off. Even though I kept telling them from the very beginning she didn't wander off, people that knew her didn't even know she had dementia. People she dealt with on a daily basis, her neighbors, they didn't know she had dementia because hers was at the very beginning stages to where she would forget a name sometimes, or she'd mix up names, but she could keep a schedule. She could give you directions. And like the doctor had said, her dosage was so low that you wouldn't really notice if she had stopped taking her dementia medication. So at the very beginning, it was definitely treated as she just wandered off. And then it was a couple months later, and the detective finally admitted, he said, this is not a case where she just wandered off. He said, I believe that at the very beginning, but this is not a case where she just wandered off. This is somebody else is involved.
Even if the dementia illness was to blame, that wouldn't explain that extra money, those envelopes being there. So that would seem like that's a sticking point. In your mind, anyway, that is a valuable clue to what happened to your mom.
Right.
Not long after she's missing, there's an alleged sighting of her near a fire station. What details did that witness provide, and do you think that was a credible sighting of your mom?
It's kind of hard for me to believe the sighting, even though, there were two witnesses that saw her. And the guy is the one that had agreed to talk to me. And I guess the lady who had seen her along with him, she was very upset about the fact that, you know, they didn't say anything at the time. But he had said that they were coming out of work. It would have been that Thursday. And it was 5 o'clock. And he saw her standing in the road looking at the fire station. And he said that she stood there the whole time as he was coming through the lot, their gravel lot there. And he closed the gates, locked the gates, got into his vehicle. And he said she was still standing there when he went to drive. And he had to actually drive around her, and said that she was just frozen in the street, just staring at the fire station.
You know, that sounds like it could be someone that maybe has a dementia or Alzheimer's or something along those lines. How closely did the police check that out to see if that might have been her?
Well, unfortunately, there weren't cameras up at the fire station at that time. So there wasn't any kind of a video or anything that they could use to verify if that was her or not.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Right.
Because then at least you could have looked for yourself maybe and made a determination if that was her. Still wouldn't explain, even if it was, what happened to her from there. Because you would think that, you know, if she wandered off, got sick, fell down, got hurt or something at some point, she would be found someplace. So
somebody would have seen her.
Yeah. So that has led you to continue to think that it is a case of foul play and not her just wandering off. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then after that, there were no sightings of her?
None at all.
And going back to her apartment, was there any signs of forced entry or that it had been broken into? Was the door locked when you went there?
The strange thing is, Meals on Wheels is stating that the door was ajar on Friday. They left it ajar the way they found it. When I got there on Sunday, the door was locked, and I had to use the key to get in. There were no signs of forced entry. The only thing that I found is in the glass of her screen door, there was a long, deep scratch that would have been consistent with if somebody would have struggled to get her out of the door. It was about the height of where they would have had an arm around her.
You know, the fact that Meals on Wheels sees the open door and your mom's not around, then you show up and the door's locked. Obviously, it didn't close and lock itself. So that's possibly a clue there, too, that something happened in between those two, between them dropping the food off and you coming to the apartment.
And the only other time that she was seen, there's another strange part of her day, that Wednesday that she was last seen, is the people at City Hall stated they saw her coming up there to change her electric at 10 that morning. And there was, the only description that they could provide was there was a scraggly man standing by her. They didn't know if he was with her or if he was just in line behind her to pay on a different account. We've tried several times to get any sort of a description as far as tall, short, thin, heavy. The only thing that they can give us is that he was scraggly. He was not known by the person that was working there at City Hall. We're still left to wonder, how did she get to City Hall? Because that is still quite a distance for her with a bad back to be walking. And I honestly don't believe that she would walk from her apartment to City Hall, because she wasn't one to just go out and take off walking.
Especially without her glasses.
Right.
And how far distance was that?
That's several blocks from her apartment.
And so there's no indication that that's definitely a confirmed sighting then.
Just the witness that was at City Hall stating that they saw her, and the information showing that she had changed the electric. She was changing the electric from Dad's name into her name.
Okay, so that would seem to indicate possibly that it was her, but then the question is, how did she get there? Did she go with someone? Now, as far as you were taken care of, you mentioned the bills and had her power of attorney and stuff. Was it out of character? Would you have normally done that, or is that something she would have taken upon herself to go do?
Actually, that is something that I had taken care of, or thought I had taken care of, because she showed me the form that she had gotten in and to change it. And so I had filled out the information at the top, and then she had signed it. I mailed it off. And they had described the paper that they said she had there, and they said the top part was one handwriting and the signature was different, which would be, so I don't know if it was, I had put the address in, flip-flop the address labels, and it got mailed back to her, but somehow she had that same paper that I had filled out for her.
It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and crowd-pleasing snacks, Cauliflower satisfies every craving. Cauliflower's products are your favorite comfort foods, but made better for you and gluten-free always. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Craving pizza? You can enjoy Cauliflower's delicious margarita pizza for only 370 calories for half the pizza. Looking for easy snacks that kids and adults alike will love? Cauliflower's baked, never-fried pizza snacks are nostalgia reimagined and ready in 5 minutes. Cauliflower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Let's be honest. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with wired bras. We love the lift, but hate the digging. We love the support, but hate feeling trapped. Well, Knix just changed everything with FreeFlex, a wired bra actually designed to work with your body, not against it. FreeFlex features a revolutionary, flexible wire that moves when you move, bends when you bend, and keeps everything exactly where you want it. No poking, no stabbing, no constant readjusting, just freedom to move. It also has a demi-cup shape for a natural lift with a lower neckline that flatters in everything from V-necks to dresses. And because it's from Knix, it's available in sizes for every body. Experience the first wired bra you'll actually want to wear all day. Visit Knix.com for 15% off your order with FreeFlex15. That's KNIX.com, code FreeFlex15 for 15% off. Knix.com.
In looking at the case, I was just looking at some different theories and some questions that have been posted on a couple of different threads about the case regarding the fentanyl, which you think is a clue yourself. I think we can rule out that your mom was somehow selling these drugs, and that's where the money in the envelopes came from. It's not like she was selling her prescriptions to someone and someone came in and did her harm. Is that correct?
Well, honestly, I can't really say that I believe, 100% that's not what happened. Mom isn't the drug dealer type. She, the only thing that would make me be able to believe that she maybe had gone out and sold a box of fentanyl is the fact that she was so insistent on paying me back, she was telling me whenever she got her taxes in that she wanted me to take that and put that towards what I had put on my credit card and pay that. And she was very insistent on making sure that she got that paid back, even though I told her, it's no big deal, Mom. I have it taken care of. So that would be the only scenario that I could see. But now I couldn't figure out who she would go and sell these fentanyl patches to, because, like I said, the only people that she would talk to is the neighbors at the apartment complex or family. She never went out. She never went to like a senior bingo or anything like that. She did go to a church on Sundays, but other than that, it was just the people in the apartment complex and family that she was ever around.
Yeah, it's not like she's moving in drug circles and with drug dealers and interacting with them and saying, "Hey, can you move this for me?" So it seems
it would have been. It would have been just a one-time. If she did, it would have been a one-time incident.
Yeah. But I guess to play devil's advocate, if someone said, "Hey, I'm really hurting, my back's really hurting," came up with some story, if I gave you some money, would you let me have a box of this? Maybe something like that could, maybe she felt bad for them and help them out. They could have used that as a story.
Right.
But I think it sounds like, as far as any kind of drug dealing per se, that's not really at play here. No. I know that you had hired a private investigator too. He was on the case. He went through, I guess, the apartment. Did he find anything? You said the cops didn't find anything in there. Did he find anything of interest during his investigating?
He wasn't actually able. He was there taking pictures, and he did take pictures. He found that scratch in the screen door of interest, but he was going around just taking pictures of the apartment. He didn't get to spend a lot of time there because he had brought his granddaughter in with him, and she had gotten sick on the way there. So he just kind of made it quick, was going to make arrangements to come back and finish getting pictures. So he didn't get a lot of it.
And some people have asked the question or wondered why the apartment was cleaned out as quickly as it was after your mom went missing. Was there a reason for it being, and how quickly was it cleaned out?
That is a very touchy subject, which I can talk about a little bit, but I don't really want to stir the pot. It was the same exact day that the private investigator was there. When I had originally talked to him, he told me that not to tell anybody that he was coming down. He didn't want anybody knowing, so I didn't tell anybody. And after he had left, it was a couple hours later, and my brothers started texting me wanting to meet at Mom's house for Mother's Day. And my son had baseball tournaments going on, so I was waiting to see what was going on with that. I had texted him back, agreeing to meet, and they said they'd get back to me. Never heard back from them. And next thing you know, apparently that night they had gone in. It was the night before Mother's Day. Had gone in with vehicles and a trailer, according to some people that were at the apartment, and had almost completely cleaned out her apartment. They had broke the locks, gone in, cleaned most everything out of there, and then also changed the lock to the apartment. That was, I believe that was about a month after she had gone missing.
Was it your plan to just leave the apartment as it was in the meantime, in case, she came back, or in case the police wanted to look in there again?
Absolutely. I was hoping that the private investigator would be able to come back in there, look things over, maybe find something. Every time that I would go in there, I would just sit and look at every little thing in the apartment, trying to look for anything that was moved or anything that looked out of place, or if she came back to have her apartment there. I mean, her rent was paid, her utilities, everything was taken care of. So there was no reason. The landlord knew what was going on, had no plans on terminating her lease, everything. I wanted to leave it that way in case there was a clue there, because it hadn't been processed from the very beginning as a scene, because it was treated as a dementia case. The very first night when all of this happened, when she went missing, I kept asking, are you guys going to take fingerprints of anything and of the door handles, anything? And because it was a dementia case, no fingerprints were taken. I had to say, hey, I'm going to go on Amazon and get a luminol kit and do luminol at the apartment. Is that okay with you, or is that going to mess up the case? Before that actually got done at the apartment. It did come back. There was no blood shown in the apartment, but the apartment itself was not treated as a crime scene. So I was hoping to leave it, hoping that somebody would be able to find something.
Well, so you actually did go through with the luminol testing yourself?
No, I had told the detective that I was going to get a kit to be able to do the luminol testing. And then he finally got the approval, got somebody in there and had that done.
Okay, so they did process it themselves.
Yeah.
So I know that's a touchy subject, but that was something that people did discuss. They wanted to know more about that on a couple of the threads. So hopefully we can, respect that and we'll leave that alone there. So where does the case stand today? What's the latest on the case?
We still have absolutely no clues as to what happened, where she is, nothing.
I don't want to put you on the spot and make you play detective here, but just knowing your mom, knowing what has happened in the case, where it stands, everything that's gone on, what's your take? Do you have a theory on what happened, whether it's right or wrong? What do you think happened, if you had to guess?
I have played every possible scenario I can come up with through my head, just looking, trying to find some sort of clue, something to follow up on. Any scenario, even if it seems far-fetched. And really the only thing that I have a couple theories of my own, but without the clues or anything to prove it. It's just my own personal theory. But I really believe it is has to be somebody that she knows. I can't figure out a motive. Mom didn't have a lot of money. As far as I know, the only life insurance policy she had, it takes 10 years for it to meet the $10,000 that she had on it. So at this point, she had gotten at the same time as Dad, so it would have only accrued to about $1,200. So unless there's another life insurance policy out there that we're unaware of, I really honestly don't know what a motive could be.
It's not like someone stand to gain like a huge amount of money from it somehow. It sounds like she just had the minimum just for like burial and that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's got to be very frustrating to just have all that and not have a real motive. And without naming names, is there anybody in your mind that you think may have played a part in it?
Absolutely.
Has that person or persons been questioned by police? Do you know?
Yes, they have.
There was not any developments. The case is pretty much at a standstill. You created the Bring Betty Home Facebook page. Tell us a bit about that page and what kind of interaction you get and what kind of stuff you share on there.
I started that page when we got the reward going and to try and get her flyer out because we had no clues if she's still in town, if for some reason somebody has her, they took her out of town, out of state. So I wanted to get her picture as far as I could out there. So I started the page up, and I try and keep updates. I mean, it's hard without really anything to be able to update the page with as far as having clues or stuff like that. But when the rewards increased, I did, her 70th birthday was back in October, and for that, I did a benefit to raise the reward to $10,000. And so I put information about that out there. I want to keep pushing her picture out and get it as far as I can, make sure that her case is not forgotten and that people keep seeing it.
So the reward is currently $10,000?
It is. They want to research the case and find the clues that we need to be able to solve the case. Then that $10,000 reward will go to them.
Yeah, and hopefully people will come forward not for the money, but just because they want to help. But that's, all the more reason if they have information to come forward. And we'll be sure to share the Facebook page, and hopefully people listening to this will share that page and follow your page, especially if they're in that area. If they can share that on their social media, that would be very helpful to you, I'm sure.
People have been amazing at sharing it and getting out there, and just being able to see the support from everybody has been amazing. It's really helped make it a little bit easier. It's been great to hear from everybody. Anybody sending, possible sightings, or they'll send me cases where remains have been found and make sure I see it, or anything they think could be tied to Mom's case. Anything they think I need to follow up on. The pages, it's very exhausting to keep up with, but it is definitely worth it, and it's definitely keeping her picture out there, and she's being seen.
Yeah, that's like a labor of love, but something that you have to do to keep her case out there. And we'll definitely share the page, and we'll share her picture and stuff. If people want to learn more about the case, or they think they have information, I'm sure they can share that with you on the page. But of course, they can contact the Sullivan, Missouri Police Department at 573-468-8001. Should they also contact your private investigator as well?
They can contact either the Sullivan Police Department or the private investigator. There is also an anonymous tip line set up if they don't want to contact the detective or the private investigator. If they don't feel comfortable with any of those, they can always reach out to me on the Bring Betty homepage.
And we'll be, like I said, we'll mention all of those. We'll share them in the episode, and people can find them, share those links, and hopefully if someone has any information, they'll come forward and do the right thing. But Tanya, I can't thank you enough for coming on to discuss your mom's case. We're certainly hoping for resolution and hoping you find out what happened to her sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you covering her story and getting it back out there.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, we hope that you'll contact the appropriate authorities.
We hope that you'll tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will really help us grow. And if you'd like to help us reach new listeners, please be sure to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get ad-free early access to every new episode of Missing Persons, as well as any bonus content.
In this episode, we'd like to thank Kara and Wright, and thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. Your Patreon support also goes directly towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with two worthwhile causes that benefit the efforts to bring missing people home: CharlieProject.org and Private Investigations for the Missing. Your Patreon support will really go a long way towards helping. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder, new episodes of Missing Persons drop every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can always find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. As we wrap up, be sure to give a listen to these previews of two true crime podcasts we think you'll really enjoy. From my friends Lindsay and Jen, who co-host Corpus Delicti and Mugshot. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt, with writing and research by Jessica Betancourt and editing by Mike Morford. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.
Movies inspired by real crimes. Cruise ship deaths and disappearances. Crimes that shape the course of history. And crimes involving families.
These are just a few of the series you can find on Corpus Delicti. Corpus Delicti is a weekly true crime podcast that takes a series approach, spending several weeks at a time discussing crime within a certain topic.
Hosted by two Southern belles, we bring you compelling stories with a hint of Southern charm. Sometimes the stories will make you cry. Sometimes you might even laugh, but they're stories you won't want to miss.
Find Corpus Delicti on your favorite podcast app by searching for CORPUSDELICTI and join us every Tuesday. Hope to see you then. You've heard the stories of bloody murder and horrendous homicide. But what about the rest of the crimes people fall victim to every day? What about the burglar who broke into famous people's homes? What happened to the forensic chemist that falsified evidence? Who are the fraudsters, arsonists, stalkers, hackers, and more? I'm Lindsay, the host of Mugshot. Mugshot is a true crime podcast bringing you stories of the non-murderous crimes you didn't know you needed to hear. Be sure to find Mugshot on your favorite podcatcher and on all social media outlets at the handle @MugshotPod. But until then, stay out of trouble, or you may end up pictured in your very own mugshot.